Welcome everyone to my Black Desert Online Gear Guide. This guide is intended for those of you who are newer to the game. My hope is to give you a better idea of what people are talking about when it comes to gear, as well as the reason why you might want to choose one item over another. At the end of the day, how you choose to progress, or what you choose to focus on, is totally up to you, but I hope this can help you get started. One last disclaimer, this video has nothing to do with life skill gear and is mainly focused on your standard gear. Dim Tree is typically best in slot until Fallen God Armor, at which point it doesn't matter what you picked. People choose Dim Tree for the amount of max HP it gives versus the small amount of HP regen Rednose gives. However, one thing to note is that when it comes to Caphras, it is cheaper to Caphras a Rednose than it is a Dim Tree. I'll go over this a little bit later when I touch on the Fallen God set. Honestly, the choice between Griffon and Giath is really up to you. Griffon gives extra CC resistance and slightly more damage rejection, while Giath gives extra max HP. In the end, both of these are used to make the Libresca helmet, which we get with the winter expansion. Some people might still talk about Heve, which is used for evasion builds, but now that the Libresca helmet is coming, it'll be the best in the slot for either damage reduction or evasion builds anyways. Evasion and damage reduction, also known as DR, really comes down to a personal choice, although some classes definitely excel with one spec more than others. These classes often have an evasion passive that gives them even more evasion based on the amount they've built from their gear. These builds use Muskin boots and Lieber's gloves. As the name implies, evasion will dodge hits from both players and mobs, depending on the opponent's accuracy stat. This in theory makes you much tankier against most opponents, especially those with low accuracy. However, most people and classes have lots of accuracy nowadays, meaning you have to give up your AP heavy accessories in favor of a Sissel necklace and centaur belt to hit meaningful levels of evasion. DR builds tend to have more accuracy on it, giving way to pure damage, as well as it reduces a flat amount of incoming damage. These builds tend to use Aragon boots and Bag's gloves. Caphras are used to upgrade your armor at the Tett and Pen stages of enhancement. Most of the time, only Pens, since the guaranteed Pen system exists. They give bonus stats as well as AP and DP depending on the level that you Caphras your item up to. You'll often hear people refer to Caphras levels as C, and then a number, typically C9 or C20. The first stages are relatively easy to reach, and then the amount scales up with each level, becoming exponentially more expensive. One thing to note is that Blackstar Armor and weapons cannot be enhanced with Caphras. Fallen God, as far as we know it, will be the eventual best in slot for armor. Currently, we have what I refer to as the chest piece, and a helmet is on the way. This armor has higher stats than you'd ever be able to obtain by upgrading its predecessor. It is made from boss armor of the corresponding slot upgraded to Caphras level 10, and then combined with either a Flame of Despair from Turos for the chest, or a Flame of Frost from the Yeti area in the upcoming winter region for the helmet. A side note for Rednose armor is that it does cost about 1,000 fewer Caphras to reach C10, and depending on the prices of Caphras, this could be about 3 billion silver or less to get it to the point where you need it to upgrade for Fallen God armor. Finally, in order to upgrade these, each of them has a special short questline attached. Blackstar Armor is a set that has slightly higher monster DR than other boss gear, however I highly recommend avoiding it as reaching the final level enhancement is very expensive and requires very high stacks around the 200 to 250 range. It can be converted into the Fallen God set, but it has to be the final stage of enhancement, which, like I said before, is very expensive. Unlike the armor, Blackstar weapons are very appealing. Their level of enhancement shares the same AP as a Kzarka that is one level higher. For example, a Tri-Blackstar is equivalent to a Tett Kzarka, a Tett Blackstar is equivalent to a Pen Kzarka, and finally a Pen Blackstar is equivalent to a C20 Pen Kzarka. It also has one more AP on the higher end until they're both maxed. The main draw of Blackstar weapons is the extra monster damage they give, as well as the extra max durability on the higher end. The Blackstar Mainhand gives the most AP out of all the Blackstar weapons and is definitely something I recommend. Kzarka is the default boss Mainhand if you don't want to spend the extra money it takes to enhance a Blackstar. Kzarka can also be enhanced through guaranteed boss enhancement quest, making it a very good, steady progression for the late game. You may hear some people talking about using Offin Tett for their Mainhand, but don't, it's not that great. It does give a little bit more AP than both Kzarka and Blackstar, but it has drastically less accuracy and as we're moving forward towards an accuracy heavy meta, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by jumping for an Offin. For Awakening, you have your choice of Dandelion or Blackstar. Personally, I like Blackstar because monster damage makes my brain go brr, but it doesn't quite offer the same amount as you would get from the Mainhand. If you're min-maxing, technically Dandy is better for PvP as it offers more all-species damage, which does do more damage against players. The real reason most people end up choosing it though is because it's a lot easier to Caphras a Dandy than it is to enhance a Blackstar, making it a lot easier to get AP in Awakening, but again, the choice is ultimately up to you. No matter what, you need a Kutum or Blackstar offhand in order to do PvE. They offer way more monster damage than you get from a Nouver, especially at the AP season gear leaves you off at. Out of all the options, this is one I could definitely see a majority of people going Kutum for, as Blackstar offhand at its maximum level offers very minimal benefits and actually 2 less accuracy. Now for a PvP offhand, you should use a Nouver unless you're an Evasion build, in which case you need to be running a Kutum or Blackstar due to the massive amount of evasion they give. This is one of those instances where I mentioned that if you are Evasion, you do have to give up damage, as in this instance, Nouver gives 12 more AP versus the others, but it doesn't offer the same amount of evasion or DP that they offer. This also means that if you don't PvP, or at least not super often, you can also just stick to a PvE offhand and not worry about purchasing a Nouver offhand. It's 2022, we don't use these items anymore. Before we had a central market, we used green gear as it was a lot easier to get, rather than now where boss gear just kind of sits on the market waiting to be purchased. The devs have mentioned they might try to do some quirky mechanics with it in LVA zones in the future, but until then, don't bother messing around with it. I do recommend, if you get them from drops or something, extract the Blackstones out of them, as they take quite a bit of time to sell, but other than that, it's honestly just better to trash them, unless you're really going to feed them to your fairy or something. You will start with Naru gear from the season questline, which you can then enhance to Pen Naru, which then turns into Pride Tuvala, minus the accessories. The rates of enhancement on Naru are crazy high, and you can spam the enhancement button on them. Don't bother using any stacks on it or worrying about running out of materials, as at the end of the Medaya questline, you get a bunch of materials sent to you. Tuvala is also exclusive to season gears, as they cannot equip normal gear. It has stats equivalent to boss gear and can even be turned into boss gear at the end of the season. It is the easiest way to start getting good gear in this game, as it is cheap to enhance, the rates are higher than that of normal enhancements, and the seasons practically throw the materials at you. This gear will bring you to about 239, 241, 303. It also includes accessories, which will be the cheapest chance you'll ever have at enhancing so enjoy it while it lasts. For more info, I will go over this later in an in-depth season guide. Narchillian gear was added to the game as an easy way to start getting some gear when BDO is out of season. This kind of made a lot more sense when there was a brief period where they were reworking seasons, but now we aren't really out of a season for more than a week or two, which is just going to be the time you'll want to wait to start the game, because Tuvala does have a lot of benefits with a higher kind of cap to it, as well as having the Tuvala accessories. It does make decent gear for boss alts, or for whatever reason, if you didn't fully finish an item during seasons, it would definitely be a great alternative to slot in while you're trying to get your equivalent boss gear. With rings, there's typically 3 types people will use: Tungrad, Eye of the Runes, or Crescent. Tungrad rings have 1 more AP than the other 2, whereas Eye of the Runes rings offers more max HP than the others. Whichever you want to run is totally up to you, but since there's already so much damage in the game, most people are kind of leaning towards the Eye of the Runes ring to help beef them up. Finally, for a season reward, you can get the honorable mention of the Pen Capotia ring, as its pen is equivalent to a Tett Crescent ring, which has the same AP, but I recommend getting the Capotia necklace first. More recently, a quest has been added that gives you a guaranteed pen accessory. This is one of those times that I strongly recommend just going for the Pen Crescent ring, as opposed to alternatives, as the Narc earring is typically made for a more specialized build, and then Tungrad earrings are just not that great compared to their alternatives. It does take a while to do, so I recommend getting started on those dailies with Giath in most major cities. That way, by the time you're ready for it, you've already done all the dailies you need. For the necklace slot, you have your choice between the Ogre Ring or the Latent Power Stone. Both do the same thing, but the Latent looks drippier. You can also substitute this with the Pen Capotia necklace if that's the reward you choose from seasons. You can also do the Tungrad necklace, which does have the same AP as the others, but offers a little bit more Black Spirit Rage. It does, however, end up costing quite a bit more, especially if you're doing enhancement. For the belt slot, you have your choice between a Basilisk belt, Valtara belt, or Tungrad belt. Most people end up with the Basilisk or Valtara, since for a while Tungrad belt was kind of expensive, but more recently they've come down in price with the release of the new Gyphon area. You have the same dilemma as the Eye of the Ruins versus Tungrad ring here. Valtara belt gives HP, while Tungrad belt gives AP. Although most people unanimously go Valtara in this instance, because again, they're just trying to stack that HP. There's also a Pen Capotia belt you could go with, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you already have the Pen Capotia ring and Pen Capotia necklace. When it comes to upgrading your accessories, I always recommend saving your earrings for last. They're the most expensive and they offer the least amount of gains. For most people, I recommend going with distortion earrings, and they're also known as distos. They do give a lot of AP, although you do have to give up some DP for them. Some people might recommend Tungrad earrings, which are kind of a wasted item as they offer very little benefit in respect to the other two alternatives. Narc earrings are another option. I do see some Guardians, Valks, and Warriors going for them as they offer extra DP in exchange for the AP you would have had from something like a Tungrad or Distortion earring, but they do also offer some Sylvian monster damage. But for the most part, unless you know what you're building, I would recommend just aiming for distos. Capotia accessories are typically given out for leveling rewards for reaching certain milestones. The ring at level 58, the earring at level 59, the belt at level 60, and the necklace at level 61. You can also receive Pen Capotia accessories as a reward from seasons, and those have stats of the equivalents: ring, crescent, earring, narc earring, belt, Bassi, necklace, ogre. These are extremely useful as placeholders until you're ready for pen accessories. Just keep in mind I wouldn't bother wasting money enhancing these, so only use the pens you get as rewards. The best order of operations for obtaining these is necklace, then ring, then earring, although hopefully you'll have your Tett accessories by the time you're done with the second season, which is doable depending on how hard you go or how lucky you get. One last thing to mention is you can technically get these from the loyalty shop, but it's a huge waste of loyalties, as well as you can technically craft these, but now with how easy silver is to get and how readily available accessories are on the market, it would also be kind of a big waste of money. Alchemy Stones are an item that offers certain benefits based on the kind you have slotted. They do have a limited number of uses, but higher tiered ones can be recharged. For grinding, you'll use a Destruction Spirit Stone until you have enough silver to buy a Vel's Heart off the market, or get lucky enough to get one from a drop. These two stones offer extra stats like AP and attack speed, which help your overall damage output in both PvE and PvP. If you're life skilling, there is a Life Spirit Stone that has its own life skill benefits, which for beginners you'll want to use when you get started with life skilling. The Vel's Heart I mentioned is a drop from the world boss Vel out in the ocean, and is a pretty nice upgrade as it gives 3 sheet AP on top of the extra benefits you would get from having it activated. Artifacts and Lightstones are a recent addition to the game. They offer many things like monster damage, certain accuracies, damage reduction to certain types of damage, bonus drop rates, and even combat XP or skill XP. They are highly customizable, which makes them nice for anyone who wants to kind of mix up their build depending on what they're doing. Something to keep in mind is they do take quite a while to get all the bits and pieces you need. Now I definitely recommend looking up a guide for them, as it can get very complicated depending on what kind of playstyle you have. Garmoth's Heart is an item that drops in the world boss Garmoth, or you can buy it off the marketplace. You can use Garmoth's Heart to reform either Awakening or sub-weapon into a fiery version. The Awakening weapon gains 3% crit damage and 2 crystal slots. The sub-weapon gains 150 HP, 100 stamina, and 10% special attack evasion rate. Your priority is Awakening weapon first and sub-weapon second. There is a baby version of Garmoth's Heart called Heart of Kuranda, which drops from the world boss Stormbringer Kuranda, a harder variation of the normal Kuranda. The issue is it only gives 1 crystal slot, and you can't use it on your offhand. Don't worry about too much about crystals until you start getting your real gear, choose a class, and know what build you're going. When you do get your Tuvala past Pry, I would recommend slotting some precisions in your Mainhand crystal, Magic Crystal of Infinity critical hit in your offhand, and then some special attack evasion in your chest. If you're really feeling it, you can get Han Hooms for your boots and helmet. However, the Hooms are kind of pricey, and really only want to be putting them in something you know you're going to be holding on to. If you somehow get your hands on a Garmoth before you really know what you're doing, You can slot an Ockrod crystal for PvE or an Alucas crystal for PvP in your Awakening. Evasion players do have some slightly different crystal builds than DR players, and they change around as the game does. If you're ever unsure what crystals to use, just ask around the BDO Discord, class Discords, or streamer Discords, and there's usually people giving out gear advice. One last thing to add on to this is that if you do die to either mobs, or if you die and have negative karma, it'll break your crystals, as well as pulling the crystals out of the gear will also break those crystals. So make sure you choose wisely and play carefully. Adventure logs in this game can offer free stats like sheet AP and DP, and it is kind of essential in the later game to do these since they are decent upgrades and don't cost much in comparison to the cost of gear down the line. However, I wouldn't really worry about these until you're at a point where you hit a standstill with your gear, as they can get kind of expensive, and doing them all at once can cause a bit of burnout. The other thing I would mention is there is an Elvia questline called Encroaching Barrier that gives 1 free AP and 1 free DP by fighting a Kzarka boss weekly. This eventually falls into some of the more endgame content, but I just want you to be aware of this, as I see people with my gear all the time hitting me with the surprise Pikachu when I ask if they've ever done it. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long video, but I hope it gave you a better idea of what you're looking at in terms of gear progression. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below and I'll answer them the best I can. Other than that, have a nice day and good luck.